say that those who are closest to the precipice are the first to fall into the abyss. So you have people who are already susceptible because they live in environmentally racist environments that are already poisoned. So there's hazardous waste. There are a lot of different things that people are exposed to on a regular basis because um, communities of color and poor communities are dumping grounds for a lot of corporations. And ever since the 70s and 80s, Black communities and communities of color and indigenous communities have been talking about that. You don't always see that on the regular 5 o'clock news, but people are constantly working on environmental issues in these communities. So there's that. Then you also have the intergenerational and historical trauma that has never been healed. Just because you set somebody free doesn't mean that now they're over it or get over it. The truth is that we now know through research that trauma gets passed on. And it looks like trauma gets passed on through epigenetics for 6 generations, and that doesn't include the original generation that was traumatized. So we're talking 7 generations hence, okay? And so we have trauma that gets passed down from one generation to the other that has never been healed. Then you have people who are living with micro and macro aggressions on a daily basis, whether it's driving while Black, walking while Black, things that people say at work. So it's this constant state of excessive stress that we don't address in healthcare when it comes to dealing with racism. To top all of that off, you have a mostly white medical community that doesn't really understand some of the communities that they're serving when they're serving people of color. There are things in communities of color that have been, again, passed down from generation to generation. And now I'm talking about stories, right? And not just stories, but things that have happened to people, how the medical community has abused and used people of color for experimentation and for vaccines and for all kinds of things. And so the community itself has an internalized fear of that system, okay, because of the abuses that have happened in the past. So you begin to add all of these pieces together, okay, and you have people who, because again of the conditions of life, and I'm not even touching upon food deserts where people don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables because of the way that the supermarkets are set up and where the supermarkets are. Access to transportation where people don't always have the transportation to get to those supermarkets that are outside of the areas where they live. So now we're talking nutrition, right? Not to mention, people get paid less for their work. And so therefore, even if they do have access to the supermarket, they have to be very cautious about how they spend the money so they could feed the entire family. So it's like one thing after another, and you keep adding those things and you keep adding those things. And so people have higher incidence of lung scarring, breast cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, all of these things that affect the community, along with the intergenerational historical trauma. You know what I mean? Like, it just adds up. And so you have a community that's been made vulnerable by the circumstances of that they live in and they live under.